Hello, hello, hello. David Ellefson here. Welcome to the very first Backstage with David Ellefson podcast. This just literally came out of nowhere. We are sitting here in beautiful Scottsdale, Arizona, next to Paradise Valley at the Star Worldwide Networks of podcasts. And in fact, starworldwidenetworks.com, you can find not only my podcasts, but also some other amazing podcasts over there. So check that out. Also, Backstage with DavidEllefson.com. And our show brought to us today by, of course, our friends at Ellefson Coffee. Hey, I know a guy. And also Harkey Amplifiers. They've been kind enough to not only support me for many years, but we got a couple of their little products back here. So this podcast is, you see me doing a million of these. I do literally 3 or 4 or 5 of these a week on Zoom, StreamYard, etc. They're all over the internet, of course. So the idea that I would be sitting here hosting one myself was an idea that I had. In fact, I got a call from a friend of mine, Brad White, a friend of mine here in Scottsdale, and he was busting my balls one day. He said he's hanging out with Dave Pratt. I said, Dave Pratt, Dave the Mayor Pratt, the morning show god of all things in Phoenix. And so he said, yeah, he's got a podcast studio. I said, man, I was thinking about doing a podcast. So he connected us. So, first of all, big thanks to Dave the Mayor Pratt, who I have known for many years. Since I moved here, he's been on morning radio with KUPD, and then I believe it was KNIX, is that right, over at Country Radio? I think, if that wasn't Camel, that's right, Camel Country, that's right. So I'm not the biggest country fan, but we live in a country music capital out here. So Dave moved over to that and has been doing morning radio ever since. So Dave, thank you, my friend, for giving me the platform for me and my buddies to sit here and shoot the breeze on all things rock and roll. Backstage with David Ellefson. Tonight, it turns out a dear friend of mine who I met in 1989, and we'll get into that here in a minute, and has been a dear friend of mine, he happened to be kind of tire-kicking the idea of Phoenix, Arizona, Scottsdale, and hit me up, and I said, man, if you can come out on Cinco de Mayo, which is why we have our chips here for Cinco de Mayo, I said, if you can hang out and come around then, come on the show and be my first guest. So, Dr. Randall Kurtz is here.
I am here.
And I don't even think of you as a doctor. Doctor of Chiropractic, right? Is that right? DC?
Yeah, that's it. That's
nice.
it. Doctor of Chiropractic. Yeah. But you can call me Randy. It's all right.
That's how I know you. So we met. So again, great history. 1989, you were hired by our then new manager, Ron Lafitte, to come in and essentially, Megadeth was on a new turn at that point. Get off drugs, get clean or else, pretty much. So you were hired essentially to be my bass tech. So this is while we were writing the Rust in Peace record, right?
Yeah.
No More Mr. Nice Guy video shoots. You were there for the Marty Friedman audition. You've got Megadeth stories. People ask me for stories. I think you've got stories. So fill us in.
Okay. Well, great to be here. Thanks for having me. Thanks, everybody. And that's what happened. I came out to L.A. to go to music school, to go to BIT, Bass Institute of Technology, which at the time was a very happening place. And may still be, but at the time, just greatest bass players on the planet, and it was considered to be sort of the quote-unquote cool rock version of like Berkeley. Mm-hmm. If you wanted to be more serious, like a jazz-oriented type of a player, you went to Berkeley. If you wanted to be kind of cool, you went to bass
Go West Coast.
And I wanted to be cool, you know.
We all did. What's funny, that's one thing we have in common. Not only that we both worked in Megadeth at one point, but we both went to California, because you're from Chicago, I'm from Minnesota.
Yeah, I'm from
Chicago. So guys
Chicago.
like us, we went west to go to Musicians Institute, BIT, and you actually did. I was going to. Then I met Dave, and we started Megadeth.
I did, and it was great. And at the time, so we're looking at '89. The music industry was totally different, as you know. And keep in mind, there was no internet, and there was no cell phones, and that kind of thing. So you basically had to go pound the pavement, and
Mm-hmm.
pay to play was the thing in LA. So you wanted to play on the Sunset Strip, okay, you got to go sell a bunch of tickets, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that still is like that in some places. Now, that's not what you had to do, but my point was, I could be walking down Sunset Strip, and guys from Warrant and guys from Poison would be hitting me up with flyers, the dudes in the bands, because they had to pay their rent, right?
Right.
And so that was the time we were kind of dealing with. So my point is simply that when I was going to Bass Institute, I realized that I wasn't pretty enough to be in one of those bands coming up, and I wasn't really talented enough to be like a studio guy.
Right.
And I didn't see that part of it working out for me, especially when I was offered a position with your band.
So how did that happen? So Ron had just started managing us.
Yeah.
So this is 1989. When was it? What month did you start working for us?
Would have been, well, let's see. I'm going to guess about June-ish.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Right, summer. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Because I had finished a semester or two at BIT. So what actually happened, and we'll get into this a little later with one of our guests. Are the guests a surprise?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll guess
So
they're a surprise here.
We may talk about this later with one of our surprise guests. So what happened was, I was a budding metalhead in Chicago, and I kind of realized that at the time fanzines were big, right? You had to get like Kerrang magazine or Sounds, which was covered all music genres.
Right.
From the UK, this was the new wave of British heavy metal. This is 1980. It was all happening now. Iron Maiden's first records, right?
Right.
And on down the line, I think Iron Maiden is the big one. You know, Motorhead kind of transcended all genres. So I
Def
think
Leppard was in there for a minute.
Def Leppard was
until
in
they-
there for a
yeah,
minute,
yeah,
exactly.
right.
Saxon and going down from
Yeah,
there.
yeah, right.
But that was when all this stuff hit, and you had to really go and find this stuff out. You had to get the magazines. You had to go buy records that you didn't know what they sounded like, but you heard that they were heavy metal, so you took a chance, you know? So you had to go and find all this stuff out. So I was going to shows, and I thought, well, you know, I could like write reviews of these shows. So why don't I call one of these fanzines and see if I could use their name and get into concerts for free. So I did. So I bought a polo shirt so I would look professional. And I was
Very
like,
metal of you, by the way.
I was what, 15, 16, probably 16 at the time. And so anyway, one of the bands that I went to see was Armored Saint,
Right.
which was opening for Whitesnake, Slide It In tour
Wow.
with Cozy and
Yeah,
with
that's
Sykes.
big. Wow.
And Quiet Riot
Great
was the
record, too.
headliner.
Great record, yeah.
Incredible
Yeah, yeah.
record, which really, started everything rolling for them.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the Armored Saint thing, I met one of their roadies who was also writing for one of these fanzines called The Crucible. And this gentleman's name was Ron Lafitte.
Okay.
And Ron Lafitte, we just hit it off.
Mm.
And every time he would come through Chicago, whether it was with Saint or Kenny Loggins or somebody else down the line, he'd call me, we'd get together, we'd hang out, and we just built a friendship.
Right.
So how does this all tie into this story, you ask?
Yes.
I'm going to BIT. I'm in Hamburger Hamlet. I see Ron Lafitte. I say, hey, man, what's up? Hey, what's going on? I live here now. Okay, cool. Hey, I'll call you. So then he calls me to start working for Megadeth, which I turned him down because you guys did an in-store at a record store that I worked at in Chicago at the time.
Yeah.
And you guys were a complete pain in the ass.
Yeah. Well, some of us.
Some of you, exactly right. I will say some of you.
Right.
Present company excluded.
Okay, all right, thank you. Well said. He was paid to say that.
And so I turned him down, and Ron just kept at it. And he kept calling me. He called like my parents in Chicago. He's calling me.
persistent.
And he was persistent, and I thought about it. And as I said, I realized that I probably wasn't going to make it as a musician in that market. And foot in the door, and I took it.
Nice. So yeah, I remember you. So you were working for me, and that was, like I said, that was the get off drugs. So you were hired as a sort of keep David Ellefson off drugs guy as well as bass tech, right?
Yeah.
We kind of had our handler guys.
Yeah.
And these are stories of folklore in rock and roll these days. I mean, these memoirs are full of this kind of stuff where, the transition into that. So thank you, by the way, for helping me with that.
Oh, you're very welcome.
It worked.
Yeah.
It's been 31 years, yep. So I've been off the sauce and all the stuff. So thank you for that. I appreciate that.
My pleasure.
And then, it's interesting. You were there for a couple of pivotal turns. In fact, I think kind of the very end of your time with Megadeth was we were cutting the Rust in Peace demos at Ron Lafitte had his office was inside of a company that was right across the street from Tower Records. We're cutting the demos. I remember Dave and I went downstairs to Ron's office during a break on the session, and there were 2 records there that had this guy Marty Friedman.
Yeah.
And Ron and we were like, "Who's this guy?" And Ron said, he goes, "I've been telling you, this guy's been calling. He wants to get an audition." And Dave and I looked at each other like we'd auditioned. We tried, I don't know, 12 guys or something. None of them worked. We went, why not? What have we got to lose? So he was there, and you were there for the audition. I mean, tell us a little bit about that process, which, by the way, Dave's book that he wrote, the Rust in Peace book, that we all pitched in to help tell our stories. You have a part in this because we included you because of this. And I think this is a pivotal one. It was kind of your final time with Megadeth before you moved on to what we're going to get into next. So fill us in.
Yeah, my last day with Megadeth was Marty's audition day. Mm-hmm. So, and as you point out, I had been brought in to sort of be a companion and try and,
You were the original
possible.
sober companion.
I was the original sober companion.
Yeah.
This is why I got the gig, because Ron hired me and wanted me to do this because I wasn't in LA yet, and I wasn't corrupted yet. I was, and he trusted me.
Yeah, right.
And I was clean.
A good
at the
Midwest
time.
guy.
Yeah, I was 23, and I was off all of my my bad habits by that time.
Very nice.
Yeah. So
some people actually grow out of them.
yeah.
Well done.
Exactly. So he and I and Nick Menza met, and then we got this thing in motion. Yeah. And there's a lot in between.
Yeah.
But to address your thing, Marty's audition day.
Because there was a moment, you remember you told me about it. Marty called from a payphone and ran out of change or was trying to get directions to the rehearsal place, right?
Exactly. So and just to back a little bit, when you guys were going, who's this Marty Friedman? I was there.
Oh,
and
were you
I knew him from the band Hawaii.
Which me and Dave knew of him from Hawaii. Yeah. They had a song called The Pit and the Pendulum. I remember sitting there with Bailoff from Exodus.
Yeah.
When he came down, Bailoff would sit there like Buddha smoking bongs and go, "Dude, this is gnarly bad. This is awesome." Yeah.
and I love that band. So Ron goes, Marty Friedman. I go, Marty Friedman, cool. Of course, nobody listened, but it didn't matter.
Yeah.
But anyway, I digress. So
you weren't paid to offer your opinion, but
right,
thank you for offering it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm at the rehearsal spot, and Marty calls up on the payphone. Again, there's no cell phones.
Yeah.
So Marty calls up on the payphone. They call me over. I get on the phone. He's like, "Yeah, I'm trying to get directions, and I'm waiting for my guy to pick me up, my friend, and my car broke down, and like all this stuff."
Every bad broke musician story you could have.
Well, that's the thing too, and this is none of this is a knock on Marty. I love Marty, right? But it was funny because again, I'm 22, 23. Now all of a sudden I'm in this world. To me, Marty Friedman is a rock star god.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I expect everything in this wonderful rock star world to be very rock star-ish.
Right.
And the truth is, hey, Marty's trying to get a gig. Yeah. Oh, you said don't hit the table. Sorry. I'll have some chips instead.
Yeah.
Happy Cinco de Mayo, everybody.
Yes.
So Marty calls me up, and I'm giving him directions and talking him through all this stuff, but I'm thinking, wow, this is a little unusual.
Right.
Also knowing it's my last day.
Nice send off, yeah.
But what Marty did, what was really smart, and maybe people can take sort of a page from this. And Marty, as addressed in the book, didn't have a pot to piss in, literally. I think he says in the book he was living on lollipops, right? Because you could get a bag of lollipops.
He did like candy. Now we know why.
He did like candy, right? Exactly. So but even being tapped out, he hired a tech to come set up his gear. Mm-hmm. And that was a really smart thing to do, because then he doesn't walk in and start fiddling with amps. And of course, something's not going to work on your big audition day, so he doesn't have to figure it out. So he hires a tech to come there, set everything up for him, and then he shows up with his carve-in guitar with no case, and holes in the jeans and ripped sneakers and all that. And again, this isn't a knock. This is just how it was, right? And he came in and he killed. And part of it was because he had all his amps set up.
Yeah.
And,
no, you're right. I remember when we walked in, he had his tech, Tony DeLeonardo, who then went on to work for us for several years after that. And he did. And I think you're right. That is the one advantage Marty had, because nobody's going to come in and play the parts of anybody's songs, especially Megadeth stuff. It's very complex. But with any gig, you're not going to come in and nail all of the nuances. There's no way you can. A lot of this stuff happens only when you're in the room composing together. There's a conversation musically that happens between people, and Marty was obviously learning other people's parts. But you're right. We agreed. Look, he probably nailed it about 75% musically on the performance, which was great. That's amazing. Better than most. But what really probably nailed it was just his composure, having a tech set his stuff up, walking in like, I got this, I'm a star, I know what I'm doing. And you're right, Marty thought like a rock star. And that was what we wanted. Nick Menza thought like a rock star. Me and Dave thought like rock stars, and that's what we needed. And you're right, that really cemented and concluded the brotherhood that became the Rust in Peace lineup. Yeah,
and you knew that, again, talking about playing the parts exactly and complexity, etc., you knew by watching him play that he was going to be able to play that.
Yeah, exactly.
Question.
Yeah, once it was shown to him properly. And it's funny because then Dave would task me with go home and show him these parts, because I could play guitar pretty good. I started writing a lot of stuff on guitar for the So Far So Good So What record. We were, at that point, we had written the Rust in Peace record. So I started to compose a lot on guitar. I really learned the nuances of how Dave played, so I would, spend time with Marty, teaching him that stuff. So
didn't Marty have his own amps there, though? He wasn't playing. Dave had an extra stack
he had all
of
this
Marshalls,
Carvin
right?
stuff. Yeah, he was one of the Carvin poster boys. Yep.
I knew he had the gig because Dave walks up to him and he goes, "You any Marshalls?" And he goes, "No, these are my gigs." He goes, "We'll get you some." Yeah.
That's you're in. So transition. So thank you for sharing that story, by the way.
Oh yeah,
because that's like deep in the grooves, right? And you and whoever was in the room, 4 or 5 of us, that was it.
That's it.
You then went back to Chicago at some point. You became a chiropractor.
Yeah.
Which I love, because next to musicians, chiropractors are probably my second favorite friends, because I need them the most after I get done playing. I'm like, where's a chiropractor? Is there a chiropractor around here? My neck hurts, right? So it was just great, I heard, when you did that. And you wrote this terrific book that I think we have a little file for, The Bassist Guide to Injury Management, Prevention, and Better Health.
Yes.
Now, it's interesting that you, of course, as a bass player, I relate, and it should be noted, you had introduced me to Steve Bailey, who was teaching at BIT at the time. He now heads up the bass department out at Berkeley, ironically. And we have these conversations. Why did you go to MI rather than Berkeley, all this kind of stuff? But he is there. And what I found interesting with this, so say you're a violin player, or you're any musician of any walk, does the information in this book help them as well, or why is it specific to bass players, I guess?
Well, to answer that question, and you don't know this, but I'm glad you asked that, because not only have I written a companion, which is volume 2 to this, but I just finished the String Player's Guide, which is available, which covers violin, viola, cello, and upright bass.
Nice.
And I've also finished a guitarist's book.
Yeah.
All of this stuff available at Amazon or at my website, which I'm sure we're going to talk about a little bit.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, musicians get a lot out of this bassist's book because it talks about things that musicians face, tendinitis, how to avoid them, how to treat them, posture. I list common things that happen, common things you can do to avoid them, et cetera, and how to treat them. Not just a chiropractic point of view. Everything isn't, oh, you got this, well, you got to adjust your arm or whatever.
Right.
chiropractic, acupuncture. I give the medical perspective. I talk about injections and surgeries, and I talk about every level of doing this because I understand every level as a musician and as a healthcare practitioner.
You've come. I remember when we've come through town and through Chicago. I think you've either given referrals or even written prescriptions from band members to go get MRIs and various things checked out. Right? Over the years.
Yeah, one of your bandmates at one time had a problem that I addressed, and I was able to get an MRI for him in California. I was able to get him a discount on it because we're in an MRI facility, but there's nobody here associated with an MRI place, right? We don't want to give away any secrets.
Yeah. I did notice that, by the way, that we are, there is an MRI place next door. So we can all go for MRIs after
Exactly.
the podcast.
So I managed to get him the MRI, to get him a deal, and schedule his surgery with, you were very busy, a band at the time. And you had about a month off in between. And I was able to, I reached out to Stanley Clark to get a referral for a surgeon, and just managed this thing from my office in Chicago. And he went and had it done. And
so cool.
Yeah.
So cool. Yeah. So look, I'm 56. I've been playing since I was 11, however many years that is. Pretty much been pain free. Again, I do chiropractic stuff. I do yoga, and I exercise. I work out a lot. I started getting some tendonitis in here, and I think it's from taking up golf last year, right? During the pandemic, I took up golf. I say this is the third time I'm going to quit golf in my life because this is now the third time I've taken it up. But it's interesting. I just played in a couple of tournaments these last couple of weeks, and I sit around and play bass. It doesn't hurt. It's fine, but I've noticed that. So I have the guard on there that I wear, and that's, for the most part, I've been pretty good outside of breaking my foot backstage, But
didn't you do that in Hungary?
I did.
Yeah.
Yes, in Hungary. After catering, ironically.
So
not that I was hungry, but we were in Hungary at catering.
I remember you reaching out to me about that.
Yes.
We talked about a couple of things. Folks, let's just talk about American healthcare system for a moment.
Can we fit that in the time we have?
No, we'll do it. It'll take 1 minute.
Okay.
Didn't you, and anybody who's had a health issue will get the idea behind this.
Oh, I know where you're going with
Didn't
this,
you break your ankle?
Fifth metatarsal.
Fifth metatarsal.
Which on your foot is basically your pinky. I broke it right here.
And it's down a little further.
Exactly.
Correct, correct. So you broke it, ambulance, to the hospital, x-rays, treatment, cast, and back, and the whole thing cost you like $300 or something.
$65. $65. And because our tour manager didn't have any of the local currency, they let us slide. Yeah, you're good. You're cool.
And right? This is an American,
in
their country, not somebody who's paying a lot of taxes for subsidized health care or something. This is a guy who broke his ankle and had need, and they took care of it.
Just a musician passing through, taking the fans' money. Which we couldn't do that night because we couldn't play.
So make of that what you will, folks.
Yeah, no, that's funny you bring that up because you're right. I was on the ground. Paramedics were there. Suddenly, a little ambulance shows up. What is the chances that there's an urgent care 5 minutes from this? We're out in this field where like Stalin was born or something, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's literally backstage, right? And so and get the cast on. I come back. I'm like, all right, should we play? And Dave's like, that's it, dude. We're out of here. You're like, we're not, fans paid for a real show. We're not going to give them 3/4 of a show, So we canceled it. We'd since made that up. But it's interesting how that, like you said, I came home and then, had the boot and the cast and the whole thing. And
also touring. So that's when I toured, not with Megadeth. I toured in 1992 maybe. And I went all over the world, but did a lot of stuff in Europe. At that time, if you got sick anywhere in the world, it was get out of there and get back to the good old US of A and get to your doctor because it's all backwards and they got old stuff and it's junk and you can't even get a phone call through, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Now it's the other way
around.
The other way
around. Hurry, go to Finland
around.
When you break your leg so you can get fixed. Yeah.
Bingo.
Yeah.
But I digress.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, it's funny. We've had Canadian crew members that when they get sick here or something happens, like they hurry to get home to Canada so they can get well and be treated. And it's almost like run from the American health system.
It's interesting.
All right. So as we move on,
yes.
well, let's You and I have invented, and are actually working on a few things, but we invented a bass strap, if you don't mind pulling that over.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was, I remember you had come to the show in Milwaukee, and you were adjusting me backstage on the chiropractic table, and we started talking about a strap. So we developed the recoil strap, which is actually available through Groove Gear, so groovegear.com.
Absolutely, groovegear.com.
Talk a little more about this because we talked about one of the things, and I actually have one here.
Yeah, go for it.
In fact, to tell you what, I'll let you talk while I model. How about that?
Okay,
All right.
okay, very
Go
good.
over the features. All right.
The styling on the Groove Gear strap is excellent. Note the rich Corinthian non-leather. That's important too.
Oh, it makes sound.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
So you had asked me about developing an instrument strap because I pointed out a lot of things that I thought were lousy about the one you had at the time. And you said, well, could we do some kind of strap? And I said, well, let me look into it. And I had a relationship already with the Groove Gear company, and we talked about it. And we figured out a way to adjust this. And what makes this unique is that it adjusts in the front as well as the back. And tell us why that was important to you for it to adjust in the front.
So I'll sit down here and talk. So the thing about it is when you adjust, because I mostly play with a plectrum.
That's a pick.
And some people play with fingers. By adjusting it here, you can adjust the height this way, right? Mm-hmm. And I tend to have the bass pretty straight, which this strap adjustment down here allows for the bass to either be straight, which is kind of how I have it, or if you want it more up and down like this, which would be more indicative of like a finger player. So by doing that, and you can do it on the fly, like Randy, you're showing us here, you can actually adjust this thing on the fly, which I do. I'll be backstage, or not backstage, but off to the side of the stage in between songs, taking a drink or something. And if I know a song like Holy Wars is coming up, I'll actually raise the strap up because I know it's going to be a little more challenging on the right hand. And if we have other songs that are kind of more rock and roll, Symphony of Destruction, To Le Mans, these kind of things, I'll lower the bass so I can just, kind of feel a little more rock and rolly out there. So it's nice that you can actually adjust it on the fly like that.
And it's the same thing in the front and the back. And the cool thing about this is that there's no buckle. And these screws on here have a little elongated end on them. So they're on there, so they're not going to just pop off while you're playing, but they're not hard to get and to adjust. So we really are proud of this strap. It's got neoprene, and now I'm saying how easy it is. Get in there.
Neoprene, meaning is vegan, right? It's not a leather strap.
Well, that's the awesome thing. So this neoprene, a lot of straps are made out of neoprene, but they're not made in this way. They're kind of thrown together haphazardly, and they tend to fall apart. This one, Groove Gear did a really nice job of putting this into compartments, so the neoprene is going to last, but there's still some give to it. So while it's rigid, you can sort of give it one of these once in a while and know that it's solid, but it's not going to be very rigid, which would press down on your shoulder. And the interesting thing that we talked about too, firstly as cost, but then as lifestyle, is okay, what we're trying to do is hide these ends, which is how the front and the back adjust. As you saw when I kind of made the adjustments here to make it longer or shorter in the front and the back. If this top wasn't here, this would be sort of flopping around on top of the neoprene. Mm-hmm. This covers it up. It's got Dave's signature on it. There's also a guitar version, which is 2.5 inches rather than 3, which is more narrow. Right. Mm-hmm. But the great thing about this is that this top is not leather. And at first we were thinking, okay, well, cost-wise, how are we going to be able to do this? Mm-hmm. And then we figured out, heavy metal, especially now, has evolved over the years to where in the period of time we're talking about 25 years ago, more than that, right?
For
like
what?
30 years ago almost.
For me, yeah.
When you saw people, mostly dudes at the time, with the long hair and all the piercings and the tats all over the place, they were bikers or convicts, right? And then people started gradually bringing it up a little bit, and now the ladies are involved, certainly, of course, and rightfully so. If that's what you want to do, more power to you. Yeah. But my point is simply that these people are super passionate about things that you're not worried about getting killed anymore. They're into PETA, and they're into
Save the earth, save the
vegan,
animals. Yeah,
save
exactly.
the earth, save
Yeah,
the animals,
right.
and they're super passionate about doing the right thing, just as they are about the music and the lifestyle and all the rest of it. So this turns out to be a good move.
Yeah, it is, because why give someone a reason not to buy it, right?
Exactly.
I
So
think
we're proud of this.
Yeah, very proud of that. Well, Randy, thank you so much for joining us. Very first episode of Backstage with David Ellefson. We are here, our sponsors, Ellefson Coffee, Harkey, and stay tuned for more episodes coming up, Backstage at davidellefson.com, also on the starworldwidenetworks.com. See my links to my episodes and many other terrific podcasts over there. So thank you for stopping in and joining us. Happy Cinco de Mayo. Happy Cinco de Ellefson. We will see you soon. Thanks.